Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. My name is Jess and I want to welcome you back to my garden. Today is May 14th and we are going to be doing a garden tour today. So if you're new here, I do weekly-ish garden tours throughout the growing season. I've been doing these for this is the fourth season to be doing weekly tours. And it's just a really cool way for me to open up my garden, which is totally a classroom for me to learn, to allow you to get some hands-on learning without necessarily being able to put your hands on it. There's just a huge benefit of watching things grow and seeing the size of them, getting an idea of the time frame, and I always like to show you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly, what's going right and what's going wrong in the garden, because I want to give you the opportunity to learn the way I learn in this space. So right now, I'm in Central Arkansas, Zone 7B. This is actually my last season at this home. We have bought a new farm. We've been kind of sharing the unfolding of this and preparing to build another beautiful epic garden. But I'm definitely enjoying this to the fullest. Let's go take a look. The roses here on the arbor are still giving quite the show. They're looking very, very beautiful. They do like this one amazing bloom right at the beginning of spring, but as long as I continue fertilizing them throughout the year, they'll bloom all the way till it starts getting cold again. This particular rose is called a Tangerine Skies Arbor Rose. I got this for Mother's Day a couple years ago from, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Lowe's or Home Depot, but it was one of those stores. Just a tip, if you ever hear me or somebody else mention a rose, the way roses work is they have a name. Like this is the Tangerine Skies is the color, and Arbor Rose is like, I guess you could say the brand or the breeder, the owner of this rose. And whereas I bought mine at Lowe's or Home Depot, that doesn't mean that's the only place you can get that one. So all you do if you're looking for a specific rose like that, it's like any other variety of things. You just go on to like an internet search engine and type in Tangerine Skies Arbor Rose for sale, and you'll be able to find retailers that have it. Roses are sometimes sold in pots. You can buy a pot with like a plant in it, or there are certain times of year, right now it's a little late to be buying bare roots. Usually they're sent dormant in the end of winter, but you buy them bare roots and they just look like bare root plants that are cut all the way down, and you plant those and they start to grow. So if you ever hear me mention a rose variety and you're looking for it, that's how you find it. You just go and search it by name. Good luck finding that bad boy though. I think that's been sold out for a good little while now. I am planning on taking cuttings of my roses, especially this one, because thanks to this glorious plant right here, I don't know that I could get my hands on them, so I want to take some cuttings because I would really love to have the offspring of this plant at my new farm. Jeremiah got these for me for Mother's Day, so they're kind of special, and they're also gorgeous. So there are mockingbirds that have a nest in my arbor rose, and so every time I come in, they hop around here and yell at me. All right, should we go to food first or cottage garden first? I think we'll come over here. We did the food first last time. I've had a lot of people asking me what the name of this one is, and I actually don't know. This was like a $5 Walmart clearance plant, and these were supposed to be the same. They weren't the same. They were mislabeled. They were both $5. So I don't know what either of them are called. I had several people tell me that this looked like a rose called Lavender Crush, and they said if it smells like lemons, then it's Lavender Crush. And I don't know that I'm really getting lemons from it. It doesn't have a super strong scent. I guess maybe it's slightly like acidic smelling. So maybe that's what it is, Lavender Crush. I don't know. They're both really beautiful though. Jill came over this week. Of course, they are purchasing our farm, and she planted some stuff. Like these are actually some artichokes in this little bed here, and those will be perennial here. We've been harvesting just quarts of strawberries out of this little sack. These strawberries came from runners that were sent by a viewer, I don't know, like a few years ago. It's been a while, and I'm not sure the variety, but they have been very, very productive. They're very good. I have Ozark Beauty strawberries over in my green stalk, and they're similar, but I don't know what this variety is. Here I have these hollyhocks coming up. I threw some amaranth in here, These will get really big and pretty. I came this week and just put a lot of seeds in random places just to fill in the spaces. Over here, this is just a really pretty display, and pretty much all of this stuff that came back from last year, either reseeded or it was perennial stuff. All of these cosmos are getting ready to bloom. I've got these roses that need some pruning back or some deadheading. Jill came and she planted, I want to say these are chrysanthemums that they planted all in here, so that's going to be really pretty. Got the herb spiral, it's like overflowing. Back here I was noticing this week, this is comfrey, all back in this section. And that started as a little hunk of comfrey that I brought back 2 years ago from the Elliott homestead when I went up there to the Pacific Northwest and visited their farm, and brought back a chunk of that plant wrapped up in a Walmart bag in my luggage, and it is massive now, and I do plan on taking a chunk of that with me to my new place. Comfrey will eventually spread even from a small bit, but it is kind of hard to start from seeds, so that's one of the things I'm planning on taking some of it with me. I've got this lovely chamomile, which is just extraordinary. I haven't picked a whole lot of it. I started picking some the other day, but I still have a lot dried in my house. I don't really need it, but I want to pick it so it'll keep blooming. And all of this is stuff that came back up. These are my Egyptian walking onions. And then they're kind of interspersed with some wild carrots and reseeded zinnias, oxalis that came back. And look at this, we're starting to get dahlia blossoms. How lovely are these? Our plan with moving is that we're actually gonna be going in August because our kids are starting school. So I will not be seeing this garden all the way through to the end, but I will be harvesting a lot and enjoying the spring and the early summer. And I'll be handing it over to Jill right as it just goes completely wild and amazing. August actually is my favorite month of the garden because it's when it just gets beyond you. So she'll be the one enjoying that this year. But I am hoping, like I said, to take some bits and cuttings and maybe dig up a few of the dahlia bulbs, especially some of the ones that have been here for a long time, and I know that they've really multiplied. And in the meantime, I'm just gonna enjoy this to the fullest. I really am enjoying it. I think this gardening year, because I know I'm not going to be doing just a ton of preserving, because the month of July we're going to be doing a lot of back and forth, doing preparations there and maintenance here and just going back and forth. We're working out all those logistics, and it's kind of given me this sort of like flippant embrace the wilderness feeling in the garden, and I've just let all the volunteers grow, and I'm not really that concerned about preserving. Like normally when I'm planting stuff, I'm thinking through when it's coming in, and I don't plant anything without having a plan for preserving it. I'll know I've got my freeze dryer, I've got my canner, I've got my dehydrator. This is how much we can use, this is how much we need to put up, this is how long it takes to put things up. And this year, I'm just growing things for the experience of growing them. I'm growing a lot of the things I'm not even gonna harvest. And it is a little bit freeing because it's just like, I can just grow it. Just grow something lovely just for the heck of it. Here, my Thai long beans are coming up, just probably a day or two away from grabbing a hold of this trellis. I've got some nasturtiums over there. Those have like quadrupled in size since I put them in. Here, I've got some lovely lettuce, looking really good. These beans, which these volunteered early is why they are so advanced. You can see I actually have little baby beans. Isn't that the cutest little thing? If a bean can be cute, this is the cutest bean ever. Look how tiny and wee. So it's got blossoms all over, lots of tiny little beans. It'll take about a week or so for these to go from this size to where I'm gonna be picking them for the table. Maybe not even that long, we'll just have to wait and see. It always happens, it always seems to sneak up on me. But there are tons of blossoms on these. I didn't even plant these. Isn't that so cool? Like last year, the fall beans So I plant beans here, and I usually do peas, and then I'll do beans early summer, and then I'll do another wave of beans in the fall. And these were the fall beans. And at the end of the year, it was kind of like to the end where you've just been eating something so much that you sort of just let some of them go. And some of them got too big on here, and they dried, and they ended up falling and laying in the soil until the spring, started growing. Managed to survive through a couple of light freezes, and now I've got beans that I'll be picking in May, which is pretty cool. I was also noticing this week some of my onions are getting to be pretty good size, so I really like seeing that. I wasn't 100% sure with how cold it was if that was going to have damaged these, but it did not at all. Now, a lot of these are like really large varieties, like super sweets and stuff like that. They've still got some time to go, but they look really good. I planted these onions in like January from sets that I bought or started onions from Dixondale Farms. And I've got multiple different varieties, and I also got shallots and leeks there in the back. And I've had people ask me if I cut the tops off my onions, because some people say cut the tops off and they'll put their energy into bulbing up. And I have not ever cut the tops off of mine, but I've never really needed to. Obviously they're bulbing up just fine, so maybe I would look into that if I felt like I needed to, but I have not felt like that. Here we have a couple different varieties of cucumbers. These are the silver slicers over here, I believe. Here are peas. The first pea blossoms on these Beauregard sweet peas. Because it has been such a cool spring, I think we'll end up getting a harvest off of these. And look at their lovely little blossoms. So pretty. Definitely really happy that that turned out well. Over on the other side here, those are golden badger beets, pink Okinawa okra, as well as Texas Hill Country okra going down both sides. Here, the chives are blooming, looking like truffula trees. Let's see, these chive plants are about 3 years old, I think. And they just come back every year, no matter how hard the winter down here in Arkansas. And we had a pretty cold winter this winter. It was the coldest one we've had in a long time. I've got a couple of volunteer zinnias. I'm just gonna leave them. Not the best spot for them, but that's okay. I just moved these cucumbers over some, and I'm just gonna let them kind of climb over from the side, and they will. And cucumbers are right there as well. It's so wet down here. We're gonna go the other way. So I have now planted this bed with all kinds of zinnias. Now you'll notice that it's pretty weedy. This is my straw mulch, growing growing weeds out of the seeds of the mulch. And that's a pain in the butt, but it's not, they're not difficult weeds to deal with. You just pull them out of the mulch. I still like using that for mulch. And I've planted all kinds of zinnias all in here. I have some volunteer sunflowers as well as some volunteer zinnias going that I'm just allowing to grow. And this brassica, which I'm just about to gather some seeds from, probably that'll be pulled out by next week. Here I've got broccoli. These are not any sort of fancy variety. These are just some starts that I bought from a local place, and they're looking good. These will all be harvested this week, or else they're gonna flower. And here are some cabbages, which are starting to get heads and are looking really good. Now this is a flat leaf cabbage, like a Dutch cabbage. In the back of my high tunnel, I have the curly leaf, like the Savoy, and these are just, I think they're called Dutch cabbage, that are just the flat leaf ones. And we have learned this year in growing the Savoy and these and the Napa cabbages that we actually really prefer the flat leaf cabbage the best, because we like to like fry cabbage or make it into stir fries and stuff like that. The flat leaf has like a thicker leaf and it just holds up more to that, whereas the curlier cabbages get a little like soggy first. So we're really looking forward to eating all of these. So far so good on the bug damage, but like this one is big enough to harvest, and we'll eat that soon and just start working our way through those. Here I have some Thai basils. Those had gotten slightly frost damage in that real mild frost, and some nasturtiums. Those all look like they're coming back. And here are tomatillos, and they are obviously doing well. Over on that trellis, those are Kajari melons. Glad to see them. And here are some bull's blood beets, and these are actually just about the right size to be harvested. So if you look down in here, you'll see I've got like a couple right next to each other, and a lot of times what I'll do when I've got this going on is I'll pull the larger one, which has just got more size to it, and I'll leave the smaller one, and when I pull this one out, it'll allow that one to access more resources, and it'll end up catching up, and I'll just harvest that in the next wave. I do try not to plant beets or root vegetables too terribly close together, but if I do have a couple that are right next to each other, I just treat them that way, kind of thinning them out and harvesting and allowing the rest to kind of catch up and get bigger. All right, so back in this corner, there are some zinnias here that have volunteered every year that I've had this garden. I planted them years ago. It was before I regularly did garden tours that I started them, and they were super pretty. They're like sherbet color, so I'm excited to see those back. Threw some other seeds in there. These are Mexican sour gherkins, cucamelons. Here I have fennel, looking so lush, feeling so soft. Gotta smell it every time I come by. It smells so good. And this is a massive Titan sunflower, which volunteered and is on a really good start of being super majestic. I actually had a few volunteer sunflowers this year, and I covered them when we had that late frost. And like here, these are also like 4.5 feet, so pretty cool. Oh, it's getting time to eat some basil. So I want to show you guys something really quick. So here are just some plain sweet basil plants that I started from seed, and I want to show you how basil grows. So basil gets a main stalk. It'll have a few little side shoots here, but when you pick your basil, if you'll look at this main stem and look at how there are these kind of sucker stems coming out of the armpits of this plant. So when you pick basil, you want to pinch it down to right above those two sucker stems. If you do that across the board on all of your plants, you end up with a nice basil harvest, and what you've just done is pruned your plants. So if you got basil growing in your garden and you don't necessarily know what to do with it, or you might think, oh, I don't need any basil right now. I try to always pick the tops off my basil when they start getting kind of tall, like this. And what this does is this causes this basil to grow bushier, and it keeps it from going to seed, especially if you live in a place that's warmer. Where I live, once it starts getting to be like 90 Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius during the day, the basil is going to want to flower. And by pruning it like that, it's going to cause it to bush out a lot of places. You don't ever want to let it get too carried away with one tall, long main center stalk. And what I usually do in a situation like this is I'll grab this. I'm just going to stick this in my pocket while we go through the garden tour, and when I go inside, I'll probably tie a little string around this and hang it upside down in my kitchen. Sometimes I'll crush this up. If you've got some lemonade, people ask me what my strawberry basil lemonade recipe is. Sometimes I will go through the process of like taking real strawberries and cooking them down into a strawberry simple syrup, and you just find a recipe for that, and squeezing lemons and mixing it in, and then you just muddle basil leaves and put them into the lemonade, and it's delicious. But you can also buy like simply lemonade, strawberry lemonade from the store, and just crush basil leaves up in it too. You don't have to get super fancy. I'm kind of the mind that most everything is better with basil in it, and basil tastes like summer to me. I love it. But if you have extra, hang it to dry in your kitchen. It'll dry up, and then put it in a bag once it's fully dry, and you just crumble it into stuff. You don't have to use it right away. You can also put it in a food processor with some oil and then freeze that into ice cubes, and you're going to throw that into cooking. But pick it. Definitely pick it. Don't think, oh, I don't have anything to do right now with it, because if you don't prune your basil, it's going to get tall and it's going to flower. And when it flowers, its flavor's not as good, so you want to try to keep that from happening. Speaking of flowering things, my parsley, which is a couple of years old, is finally starting to flower. And isn't this so neat? Plants are fascinating. So parsley is a relative to a carrot, also a relative to Queen Anne's lace, which is a wild carrot, and you'll notice that this looks like Queen Anne's lace. Isn't that neat? We've got tomatoes growing all the way down here, starting to set some flowers. We should probably have fruit set before too long, and also gonna have to start tying these to the trellis pretty soon. Over here I have lots of young summer squash plants. That's always one of the first foods that we really start substantially eating out of the garden in late spring, early summer. And all down here are some red cutting sunflowers. So down there, lots of chard. This is like a bronze fennel. All those fennels were from starts, and I just put them in, and look at them. They're just so big and pretty. They smell so good. More tomatoes. More tomatoes. Here on the other side of the chard, we have pineapple ground cherries, and this is where I made a mistake, and I'm going to show it to you guys. So I did not harden these off properly, and that's what this looks like, guys. This is what plants look like when they're not properly hardened off. This is a serious case of sun scald, and unfortunately most of my pineapple ground cherries look like that. So you may be wondering what I'm gonna do about this, and the answer is nothing. It's not great. There's nothing I can do about it now. It was just a goof up on my part. I've been pulling the plants out, and I just thought that these were in the bunches that we've been pulling out. And apparently it wasn't enough. And it was just really sunny and hot when we moved them out here, and they got some damage. These leaves are definitely not gonna be okay. But as you can see, there are some new leaves coming in. They're thicker, they're tougher, and I think these plants will most likely make it. They might be a little stunted. I do have pineapple ground cherries volunteering around the garden, so this isn't the only harvest I had. You do definitely want to harden off your plants. I have a video telling you how important it is, but you know, this is what happens if you don't. It can kill your plants, it can stunt them. A lot of the times they get damaged, but they pull through, and we'll just see what happens with these. Back on the back row here, I've got lots of lovely roses. This is an experiment tomato. I just planted this one, and I am literally just letting it go. I'm gonna show you guys how a tomato grows whenever we don't interfere, because I explain that often. So that's gonna be a little example for you. So pretty. Y'all look at this thyme. So good, that's nuts. I've got things planted on all the trellises that just haven't come up yet. A lovely onion that was left behind from last year, and I saw that it had shot up and was starting to flower and just decided to let it. Isn't that so neat? Over here I planted glass gem corn all up in here. And this I actually need to ID. I let this grow because I thought it might have been Roselle coming back, and I'm thinking that that is not the case. Does anybody know what this is? Got a little white flower coming up on it. Probably just a weed. I probably need to pull it out. I do have some volunteered Malabar spinach. I'm gonna move back to this trellis. See volunteer ground cherry here. This is actually a volunteer tomato. And I don't know, I might let it grow. Over here are some more volunteer ground cherries, as well as some volunteer okras, and I have committed to pretty much let any volunteer that comes up, as long as it's not directly in the way or a detriment to the other plants around it, I'm gonna let them grow. So these are all gonna stay. In the past, I will let volunteers grow some, but I would largely pull them out so that I could go along with my garden plan. But this year, being my last year with this garden, I kind of wanted to give her a say in what we decided to do. So that's why there are so many volunteer things. So the placement in this garden this year might be a little bit weird, but I'm committed to it. It looks really good. And it's kind of exciting to me because in the middle of May, I don't always have so much that's this established. Oh goodness, we are going to be chasing some chickens around tonight. Look at all these little guys out of the coop. All right, now back here in the back, I've got elephant garlic and garlic, random sunflowers growing in the walkway. And I'd actually told Jill that they could plant this, but I'm not sure that they put anything in here yet. I think they're planning on putting cut flowers in here though. Back here, my potatoes are looking splendid. I'm just so tickled by them. They're gorgeous. So I put those potatoes in the middle of April, so like 4 weeks ago. And they look really, really awesome. So putting them in the middle of April, probably harvesting them in the beginning of July, I would guess. All right, let's take a look in the high tunnel. A lot of this you guys have seen recently. I started harvesting my cabbages. I still have a few more to get through. And then down here, these had not started to really head up yet. But these are like red flat leaves. I still haven't done anything about this atrocious mess. And part of it's starting to flower. It's really shameful. But look, there's like sizely beets in here. It's pretty good. I wonder what these carrots are like being so crowded, if there's any size to them. With carrots sometimes there's only one way to go about it. Oh, look at that. That's cute. There's a little snack, a little garden snack for me. So over here, Jill planted a lot of ginger down this side. Those are leeks and shallots all along the outside of this bed. And then over here are tomatoes and this random kale, which you go kale, you try for it. All of these tomatoes are determinate varieties, which I plan on holding up with a Florida weave. My logic behind doing determinates out here was that they don't have to be pruned. They don't have to be like consistently tied up to trellises. They can get kind of tall. They're not like completely hands off by any means. They will have to be supported. But whereas you prune off the suckers on indeterminates, or I do. I prune off the suckers on indeterminates and plant them closely together. I planted these further apart, and you allow all the suckers to grow because there's a determined amount of blossoms that that fruit is that plant is going to set, and a determined amount of fruit. And my hope was that in planting this kind of thing, it would just be less work in the midst of moving. I did have the 3 rows in the front of cherries and slicers, which are all indeterminates. And back here I did all determinate. I had these, they were kind of puny, so hopefully they'll pick back up. But these are a splash of cream variegated tomato. Last year I noticed that the variegation in my variegated tomatoes, it faded out and was all green in the full sun front garden. So my thought was, in having these in the back garden where they would be shaded with the shade cloth of the high tunnel, that they might remain variegated. So these 3 are the exception to my determinates. These are the only indeterminates back here, and these will probably just end up, we'll tie them up to the ceiling instead of trying to erect some sort of structure there for them. Here, this calendula still kicking, looking really good. These are a cucumber called Monica in here, which is a cucumber that doesn't require pollination, so I'm not really worried about it getting pollination in here because the walls are open, but that way I don't have to worry about it. And over here I got all of the peppers in this week that I'm growing just in time for our temperatures to drop. Pretty chilly, really too chilly for peppers. I got down to 40 Fahrenheit, 4 Celsius this week, which is really, really unusual for us. And it's not great for peppers. Of course, they were probably a little warmer in here even with the walls open, but hopefully they're okay. Here are the hot peppers. I've got poblanos, which are not really hot. Those are kind of mild. But jalapenos, habaneros, serranos, sugar rush peach. Still not super hot peppers. Padron. None of those are super hot, but we don't do super hot. These are just some random peppers that weren't marked. Eggplants of varying varieties, and then all of these are sweet and seasoning peppers. And these don't look like much now, but they're gonna be really awesome. You'll notice they're planted pretty close together. Peppers do like that. And I'm not 100% sure what we're gonna do for support for these this year, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Oh, one more thing. My banana plants did not come up in the front, but the one that was back here is coming back up. So I don't know if the ones in the front got too cold, but I am glad to at least have one. So this is the first week that the garden is pretty much entirely in. And I know we kind of just zoomed through it, but before too long things are gonna be producing, and I'm gonna have to come out with my harvest basket, my harvest apron. We are now daily eating things out of the garden between the cabbages and the greens and the lettuces. And before too long it'll be beans and squash, and then we'll move into fruit like tomatoes and peppers, and then cucumbers and melons and all the lovely garden food. I'm so glad to have fresh garden food again. Just makes me really happy. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. God bless you. Until next time.